I used to be a minor league baseball umpire. I did that fresh out of college. And day in, day out, having to be on the road all the time and being under constant pressure, that was less pressure than going on 15 on Fridays with Fletch.
So now, please welcome the official, non-official, non-sponsor of the Savannah Bananas, but a big fan. Please welcome John Fletcher.
Well, thank you, my friend Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, and welcome to this week's edition of 15 on Fridays with Fletch. You've heard our guest on the Dallas-Fort Worth area radio with KRLD, and before that, WBAP. Before that, in Houston on KTRH, and before that, in Portland, Oregon, and Hermiston, Oregon, wherever Hermiston is. He's been named the best reporter in Texas twice, and his website, alanscaia.com, shows him interviewing Chewbacca from Star Wars fame. He's also received 5 Edward R. Murrow Awards, which is the highest honor a broadcast reporter can receive. He's a member of Mensa, the organization for the world's most intelligent people, which has led him to ask thought-provoking questions that other reporters might be afraid to ask, or they might not even have thought to ask the question. He goes above and beyond what you'd expect from a reporter, which has led him to create his own podcast, The Texas Correspondent. Please welcome the #1 radio reporter in Texas, my good friend, Alan Scaia. Alan, how are you doing today?
I feel like I'm under a lot of pressure. Like hearing that whole rundown, that feels like a lot of pressure now.
Hey, don't worry about it. You've had more. Think of this as being like your World Series. There you go.
Fair enough.
Well,
I will tell you, like a colleague of mine, Eric Bushman. So I was best reporter a few years back, but one of my coworkers, Eric Bushman, he's one of the finalists for this year. So anyone who's got a vote for him.
You've earned a reputation as a fair yet detailed reporter, which has led you to interview some amazing people. Who are some of the newsmakers that have impressed you the most?
Let me answer. I'm going to answer that with sort of a blanket. Like I'm not just going to rattle off a list of names, but you know who it does for me is it's a newsmaker who they don't have to have like a script in front of them. You know, like you can ask them a question. They might say something interesting. It's like, oh, you know what? I want to follow up on that. And they can, you know, it's not like an interview. Then it sort of sounds like a conversation. And those are the ones who impress me the most. Those are the ones where, you know, like we might sit down for what's supposed to be a 10-minute interview, and then it goes on for half an hour. And I realize I have to find like the best 15-second soundbite to use. But yeah, those are the ones who, like, it's not one person in particular, but it's anyone who, you know, they know their topic well enough, and they're comfortable enough that they can just sort of open up and talk like a conversation instead of talking like they're reading from a script.
Yeah, so they don't have some notes from their communications director, but rather they know it internally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me this. Do you consider yourself to be more of a journalist or a storyteller? And what's the difference?
The journalist, like I would say I'm more of a journalist when it comes to the serious stuff. And I think that's the difference. Like a journalist is what you might think of for the more serious stuff, you know, like the school board meeting or the city council meeting, or if there's a natural disaster someplace, like going there and telling people, then, you know, then you're just saying, okay, here's what's going on right now. You know, we're going to get whipped with severe weather, I'm sure, sometime this year. And it'll be, someone who's out there saying, I'm looking at it right now. Like if you live at this intersection, you need to be undercover. You know, it's like, that's when the serious thing goes. But then for lighter stories, that's when you want to do the storytelling, you know, maybe it's, maybe it's, you know, maybe it's going back to a town after the tornado and saying like, what's special about your town? And everybody is coming together to start rebuilding, and everybody is, you know, like everybody kind of coalesces around each other, you know, then it can be a lighter story. And like, what would you want people to know about your town when there's not a tornado? You know, what's the best restaurant in town? Or is there some, you know, did someone famous ever come through here? Did Jack Nicholson ever come through here? And, you know,
Well, then also, just like you did Arlington Interlochen, talking about Christmas, and that was a lighter story that you were able to help kind of tell the story with Ralph Sobel.
yeah, that's one too. Like those off the beaten path stories that they may not get a lot of play anymore because the focus group tells you that, you know, we need to cover the crime story. We need to cover political scandal. We need to cover everything bad. It's like, well, what if we did a story? And like Interlochen is a good example. That may be a lighter story, but it's important. It is serious because you're going to have 60,000 people going through this neighborhood. They have to have police directing traffic. Like, there's a logistical issue that you do need to get the word out. It's going to be a huge thing.
Right. So tell us about a major newsmaker that you'd like to interview again and what questions you might ask.
I I've thought about this. Like, who might be interesting to talk to now is Rick Perry,
Yeah.
because I just sort of would like to see what he thinks of the current political climate. It's like, because I moved here when he was governor, and even then, the legislature would always have its hiccups, but they would get the job done. But now we've had the quorum breaks, and it's like everybody is all the time. It's like the two sides never can work together anymore. And so I would like to, I don't know, I wonder what he would say about, here's how you have to roll up your sleeves and get down and like go into the legislative dining room and talk to these people. It's like, okay, if you're a Democrat, what do you need to make this bill happen? If you're a Republican, what do you need to make this bill happen? I wonder if any of that camaraderie still exists.
Well, if you go back to the days when Bob Bullock was sitting there in charge of the Democrats, and he was working with the Republicans to make things happen. So just what you're talking about.
Yeah, instead of that, the constant fighting, it's like, okay, yeah, how do we work through it? And I know there have been quorum breaks before, but it just, it seems like the past 10 years or so, it's got not just, and I don't mean that just state level. I mean, that's like national politics. It's just, I don't know. It seems like politics is a racket anymore. and so, it's like, I wonder if Rick Perry would get elected in today,
Right.
you know?
So what would be your 3 bucket list interviews that you would want to conduct?
I, being a Ball State grad, I would love to talk to David Letterman. I think it would be interesting. I know he doesn't like doing, he doesn't like I think he's very, introvert, but yeah, I would love to talk to him, not just interview him necessarily, but just like talk to him and be like, hey, what did you think of Ball State when you were there? And like, did you know what you were doing was going to be special when you first started?
Well, so what you're asking different, more insightful questions than the standard reporter would ask.
Yeah. Well, and that's one too. Like, that goes back to what we talked about earlier, that, when you go in with a list of questions, you might miss, if you're not listening to the other person talk, you might miss the most interesting part of the interview, where it's like, oh, that would have been interesting to follow up on, but if you're just going like, I got to ask about politics, that's it.
So what's the most bizarre answer that anybody gave you to a question?
Most bizarre, that it's because I think, like, is it something that's off topic, or is it something that, because there was one, it was a school district I would prefer not to name. It was during COVID, and they were having a drive-through parade of like summer interns. So they have mayor's summer intern programs, and they were doing it as a drive-through, and they invited reporters to come, but they wouldn't let us ask any questions about COVID. Like, it's like, why is this taking place as a drive-through, and you're saying you're not going to answer a question about COVID? And so that seemed bizarre to me, and that happens occasionally too. Like, if you do have a public relations person who, like, they want to send out the press release, but then they don't want the person to actually have to answer any questions.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that might be the most bizarre, is when you get, like, we want you to come, but don't ask any questions, and that they seem genuinely surprised when you show up at an open press event to ask a question.
So who was, even surprisingly, the kindest and most thoughtful person you've ever interviewed?
I met Jimmy Carter when he was doing a habitat build in Fort Worth, 2013 or 2014. And his staff was, they had to, and even then, because what was he would have been like 90 years old then, but he wasn't just there for the photo op. Like, he was there hammering away on the house. And so his staff they had reporters come and do interviews, but they wanted to do it one-on-one, and they spaced them out through the day so that they would have a reason to force him to stop working. It's like you have to take a break, sir. Alan Scaia is waiting to do an interview, and that would get him to sit down, go under the tent for a little bit. And so yeah, like that was his break from working. But also he was very cordial and very he was like, he's like, because he's like, okay, Alan, nice to meet you, Alan, and like it's like saying your name over, like where he's putting the thing that's like so he remembers your name, and that really stuck out to me, is he was very gracious, and also the same with like very knowledgeable, where it's like you could he even picked up on when I was talking to, he's like, I'm learning as I'm down here, and he's doing it in that Plains accent, which I can't do. But he's like, as I've been down here, I learned Dallas and Fort Worth have a little bit of a rivalry. and he said, but no, you know what? When we're building the house, like both chapters, Trinity and Dallas, both come together and work well together. And so maybe that's, a message, is that, everybody comes together when we need it. And so that was one of the most, like, he was very genuine. You could tell he wasn't just there for a photo op. He really cared about the project.
Now comes the hard-hitting question. Is it true that you have won several hot dog eating contest competitions on the 4th of July at Curly's Frozen Custard? And do you have any proof of your excellence?
It's John, we were on a hard-hitting, very in-depth interview right up until this point. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about what I may or may not have won, hot dog trophies I may or may not have. That would be absolutely ridiculous and remarkably, selfish and self-centered. And that's just not me, John.
It's not you at all. And so would you like to give a shout out to Denise?
Yeah. So here's the thing. A lot of I don't know if there's a way to. Okay. I don't know if you can see it on the thing here, where it says a hot dog eating. Oh, this was this. Was this from this? Oh no, this was. I'm sorry. This is it here.
We've got it.
Yep. Yeah. The media division runner up. In 2020, because you always figured out a way to give me a trophy. And so, like, when Denise started winning, because she was working at the Star Telegram.
Yeah, Denise Harris.
And so you invented a broadcast division so that I could be the champion of the broadcast division. And then a guy from was it Sean Giggy from Channel 8?
Yep.
And then he showed up and then he won the broadcast division. You would think a guy my size would be better at hot dog eating contests. But I lost every one of them. But every time I got a trophy with a different thing on the top of it. And you did in 2020, you gave me the one that says champion because you couldn't have it because of COVID. And so you're like, so that means you're the champion because there wasn't a contest. So kudos to you, John Fletcher, for loading me up with participation trophies.
Hey, that's okay. Well, tell us about your podcast because you're starting up again in March, the Texas Correspondent. And who are some of your future interviews?
Yeah. So what I've been trying to do is really do that stuff where you dig in like we can't do anymore, and because we're always going from thing to thing to thing to thing because we're so short staffed. And so I started a podcast where you can really dig in. And so, back in the fall, I did that thing on Interlochen, the come and take it flag.
Yeah.
I went down to Gonzales and did a week on the history of the come and take it flag. It's really gotten a lot of attention lately. So what about the history? Why is the come and take it flag? I didn't realize the first come and take it flag was actually painted on a wedding dress.
Wow.
Because that's what they had when they had to fend off the Spanish. And so so that's what I've been doing. And then coming up this next 5-week season is going to be really sports heavy because we've got the IndyCar race coming up in Arlington. And so I've talked to the director of the race about what it's like. It's hard. Actually, he said it wasn't really. He's like, but the logistics, I thought it would be harder to try to build a road course where it had never existed before, There are like the
there is a rumor that 7-Eleven is sponsoring part of the race and that the drivers have to stop and drink a big gulp on every lap.
boy, there's gonna have to be a rest area somewhere along that track then.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, and he talked about that. He said because I was really because yeah, it's not just an oval and it's not like a defined um like like road course, like Laguna Seca. It's not an oval, but it's a speedway. Um, and yeah, he talked about some of the logistics of that, of making sure they have space where they're gonna have to do some grading at the intersection between AT&T Stadium and Globe Life Field at AT&T Way and Randall Mill. He's like, we're gonna do some grading there, so that the cars can take it at an angle. But he said, like Randall Mill itself, it's in good shape. He's like, we're gonna go through, and the parking lots are in good shape too. And he said logistically, the toughest part was getting the turn off Randall Mill into the AT&T Stadium parking lot, and then they have a horseshoe that goes around a real tight curve. He said that was the toughest thing, mainly because they were trying to figure out where to get the stands and everything. And so, but yeah, he said, like smoothing everything out. Like they went in, they put some temporary gravel, like to make sure the potholes wouldn't be a distraction. But he said, like, we have bumpy tracks elsewhere too. It's not like everything is always going to be super smooth. And so the teams, they have to fit that into their planning of, okay, we are not going to be on a smooth track. We're going to be on a road that has, the divots in it already where, other cars are driving. And so, yeah, just kind of like the logistics of the race, of like how the drivers prepare, how IndyCar prepares. Like that's kind of interesting stuff, I think.
No, I think so as well. Thank you to Alan Scaia, the Texas correspondent, and the Texas Association of Broadcasters Reporter of the Year for the second time, and also a world-class champion hot dog eating contestant. So we look forward to seeing you again soon. So thanks for joining us for 15 on Fridays with Fletch.